Welcome to this episode of Preaching the Word, a video series on preaching sponsored by the Dunk Tank and the Berman Ministry Center. My name is Dr. Stephen Reasor, and I'm a preacher and author, and I teach preaching at Berman University in Lacombe, Alberta. In this episode, we begin the final stage of the sermon process, the manuscript stage. Congratulations for working through all of the complex and sometimes difficult steps that lead here. The first step of this stage, which is the 10th step in our sermon process, is to write your manuscript. This might seem daunting, but at this point you have a very good idea of what each move needs to say. Your job is to write what exactly you are going to say in each move of the sermon. You may be thinking, why would I need to write out exactly what I'm going to say? I usually write out an outline and just figure it out what to say in the moment. I can tell you from personal experience that if you want to go from preaching mediocre sermons to preaching competent, compelling sermons, you need to write a word-for-word manuscript so you can plan the specific details of what you will say and how you will say it, and not merely the big ideas. Doing this helps make sure that the big ideas of your sermon are clear and they won't get lost in the details. Now, we've already developed the central claim of each move and considered what elements are needed for that claim. Our first job in writing out the specific words of each move is to start with the openers and the closers. That's the introductions and conclusions of each move. In order for an idea to fully form in the minds of the congregation, it needs time to develop. The opener states the basic claim of the move in a series of 3 to 4 short sentences. The claim of the first move in my sermon is, although bosses want watchful, guarded employees they can trust, we often prove untrustworthy. I want to make that claim clear, so I might write, every boss wants trustworthy employees. Watchful, careful, faithful. Our heavenly boss wants those kinds of employees, but we often prove untrustworthy. The opener states and restates the essential elements of the claim of the text. It may look a bit strange on paper, and it might sound overly repetitive in a conversation, but we have to clearly describe the move so that everyone in the whole church starts on the same page. After we've written our opener, we write the closer. How will we conclude the move? In a similar way that we open the move by restating the claim of the move, now informed by all that we have said within the move. For instance, in this move, I'm going to use an illustration about an untrustworthy employee named Bill who only does the bare minimum. So, in my closer, I could incorporate a reference to that illustration. I could say, we are not good employees of Jesus, our heavenly boss. Too often we act like bare minimum Bill and not like faithful, trustworthy employees. Jesus wants watchful, careful employees he can trust. That's not us. After you've written the opener and the closer of each move, fill in everything in between. When you are done, go on to the next move and the next until the first draft of your manuscript is complete. You'll notice that in my manuscript I use short sentences. I use idioms and contractions like that's instead of that is. Although we are writing out a manuscript, we are writing something that will be heard by the ear and not read by the eye. So, as Robert Jacks notes in his helpful book, Just Say the Word, we need to write for the ear. This can be tough. If you've been taught to always use good, proper English when you write, you can end up sounding like someone who isn't you. In the event that the incipient occasions of undertaking are not propitious to the attainment of the end result which you seek to attain, enter upon a subsequent venture, and thereupon indeed a tertiary, and do not permit your endeavors to be terminated, albeit you persist in being ineffectual with every undertaking. In other words, if at first you don't succeed, try again. As much as is possible, write your manuscript quickly and speak it out loud as you write so that you can hear what it sounds like. Don't be too critical about what you're writing. This is only your first draft. It does not need to be perfect, but it should sound good when read out loud. It should sound like you. I know this seems like a lot of work, but trust me when I say the time and discipline required to consider each word you speak will result in a more pointed and powerful sermon. Your assignment: write out a word-for-word manuscript of what you intend to say in your sermon. How many words should your manuscript be? Well, a good target is to speak between 130 and 150 words a minute when you preach. That means if you plan to preach for 20 minutes, your manuscript should be about 3,000 words long. If you plan to preach for 30 minutes, you'll need another 1,500 words. This concludes the manuscript writing step. When you have finished your assignment, join me for the next episode of Preaching the Word, where we go back to the manuscript for the essential job of editing it.